I'm Jasmine, 32, standing in my Chicago kitchen with frosting on my hands. It's 10 p.m. The night before my daughter's 7th birthday. The balloons are up. The gifts are wrapped. I check my phone, smiling, expecting a text from my dad asking what time to arrive. Dad texted, "We're skipping your kid's birthday." "Things are tight," I said. "No problem." 2 weeks later. At Christmas, I saw their post, rich gifts, balloons, all for my brother's kids. My girl whispered, "They forgot me again." I just quietly did this. By 8:30 a.m., Mom was banging on my door. She was screaming nonstop. Before I tell you what I did next, drop a comment and let me know where you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. I'd love to know who's part of our community. I didn't scream when I read that text message. I didn't throw my phone across the kitchen. I just stood there staring at the screen until the backlight timed out and the room went dark. Things are tight. That was the phrase my father, Jeffrey, used whenever he needed a deposit. It was the magic spell that opened my wallet for the last decade. But standing there in my narrow galley kitchen, surrounded by the smell of vanilla and the hum of my old refrigerator, I finally did the math. I call it the ledger. It's not a physical book, but it's burned into my mind in red ink. You see, I live in a modest 2-bedroom condo in a working-class neighborhood in Chicago. My view is a brick wall and a fire escape. I drive a 6-year-old sedan that rattles when I hit 40 miles per hour. I clip coupons. I brown bag my lunch. I do this because, according to my parents, we all have to make sacrifices for the family. But the family doesn't live like I do. My parents, Stacy and Jeffrey, live in a 4-bedroom colonial in Naperville. They have a manicured lawn, a 2-car garage, and a membership at a golf club they can't afford, and they keep it all because of me. For 3 years. On the first of every month, I have transferred exactly $2,500 to their joint account. That covers their mortgage and their supplemental medical needs. That is $30,000 a year. Over 3 years, I have poured nearly $100,000 into a house I do not own. For parents who just told me they couldn't afford a $20 birthday gift for my daughter. Why did I do it? Why did I let myself bleed out financially while they lived in comfort? It wasn't just generosity. It was something darker. It was a tax. There is a psychological trap that children like me fall into. We are the useful ones. We aren't the golden children like my brother Justin who gets love just for existing. We are the enablers. Growing up, I learned a very specific lesson. My value to this family was entirely dependent on what I could provide. If I wasn't solving a problem, fixing a crisis, or writing a check, I was invisible. I normalized their cruelty because I thought it was the cost of admission. I thought that if I just paid enough, if I just sacrificed enough, eventually I would buy my way into their hearts. I thought my usefulness was the only thing keeping them from abandoning me completely. So when Justin needed $1,200 for emergency car repairs last month, I sent it. When Mom needed specialists that insurance wouldn't cover, I paid the bill. I ate ramen noodles and canceled my own gym membership so my brother could drive a leased SUV and my dad could play golf. But looking at that text message, "We're skipping the party," something snapped. The ledger was full. I realized I hadn't been buying their love. I had been financing their indifference. They didn't see me as a daughter. They saw me as a utility bill, a resource. And you don't think a light switch for turning on. You only notice it when it stops working. Standing in the dark, listening to the silence of my small, paid-for apartment, I realized I had spent my entire adult life building a safety net for people who would happily watch me fall. But the safety net was gone, and I was about to let them hit the ground. I walked over to my laptop, the screen glowing blue in the dim light of my living room. I didn't slam it open. I didn't furiously type out a manifesto. I opened it calmly, like I was checking the weather. My hands were steady. The anger that had been vibrating in my chest a moment ago had condensed into something cold and solid, like ice forming over a lake. I logged into my banking portal first. There it was. The scheduled transfer for the 1st of January. Mom and Dad support, $2,500. I hovered the mouse over the trash icon. For a second, a lifetime of conditioning screamed at me. They need this. They will lose the house. You are the bad daughter. But then I looked at the time on my phone. It was Christmas morning. They were waking up in Naperville, surrounded by warmth and abundance. While I sat here alone, I clicked cancel. Then I clicked confirm. The line item vanished. Next, I opened the leasing portal for the luxury SUV. 2 years ago, my dad, Jeffrey, had given me a sob story about needing a reliable vehicle for his health appointments. I co-signed because my credit was perfect and his was a disaster. I navigated to the early termination clause. It would cost me a penalty fee, but I didn't care. I viewed it as a severance package. I initiated the surrender process, citing financial restructuring. I closed the laptop. The silence in the room was absolute. It felt heavy but clean. The reaction wasn't immediate. It took 48 hours for the banking system to catch up. I was at work reviewing shipping manifests when my phone started to buzz against my desk. It wasn't a ring. It was a spasm. 12 missed calls in 3 minutes. Mom. Mom. Dad. Mom. Justin. I didn't answer. I turned the phone over face down. At noon, a voicemail notification popped up. I went to the break room and listened to it on speaker, keeping the volume low. It was my mother. Stacy. She wasn't crying. She was screaming. Jasmine, what did you do? The bank just called. They said the mortgage transfer bounced. They said there were insufficient funds authorized. We are standing here at the teller window looking like idiots. Fix this immediately. Do you hear me? You are embarrassing us. I deleted the voicemail. I didn't feel the usual spike of anxiety. I felt like a scientist observing a specimen. She wasn't worried about me. She wasn't asking if I had lost my job or if I was hurt. She was worried about her embarrassment. Then came the text from my brother. Justin. Mom is freaking out. Dad says you cut them off. Seriously, over one missed birthday party. Stop being so petty. Jasmine, you know they rely on that money. Don't ruin the family vibe just because you're jealous. Jealous. The word sat on the screen. Ugly and absurd. I wasn't jealous of their love. I was exhausted by their theft. I didn't reply to him either. I went back to my desk and opened a new spreadsheet. I started listing every utility account, every streaming service, every insurance policy where my name was attached to their comfort. I wasn't playing a game. I was systematically dismantling the infrastructure of my own exploitation. They wanted a reaction. They wanted a fight. But I wasn't going to give them noise. I was going to give them silence. And silence, they would soon learn, is the most expensive thing in the world. The silence in my apartment began to curdle. For 3 days, I hadn't spoken to my parents. I hadn't transferred a dime. But in the quiet of my living room, the guilt began to creep in like a draft under the door. It is a specific kind of guilt that only survivors of this dynamic understand. It's a phantom limb pain. I felt the urge to fix things. I felt the urge to apologize. Even though I hadn't done anything wrong, I kept thinking, maybe I was too harsh. Maybe I should just pay the mortgage one more month to keep the peace. Maybe I can swallow my pride so Savannah doesn't lose her grandparents. I was wavering. I was standing in the kitchen, my thumb hovering over my phone, debating whether to unblock my mother, Stacy. Then I walked into the living room. My daughter, Savannah, was sitting on the floor by the window. She wasn't playing with her dolls. She wasn't coloring. She was holding my old iPad, the one I used for recipes. I had thought I logged out of everything, but the Facebook app was still open. She was staring at the screen. Her small face was illuminated by the blue light. And her expression wasn't sad. It was confused. It was a deep, furrowed confusion that looked too old for a 7-year-old. I walked over and looked over her shoulder. On the screen was the photo, the Christmas photo. My parents beaming in my brother's living room, surrounded by piles of gifts, hugging Justin's 2 sons. Savannah, I whispered. She jumped, looking guilty. I'm sorry. Mommy, I just wanted to see. It's okay, baby. I sat down next to her. I wanted to take the tablet away to hide the evidence, but it was too late. She looked at me, her brown eyes searching mine. Mommy, she said, her voice quiet. Is it because I'm not a boy? The air left my lungs. What? Grandma and Grandpa, she said, pointing to the screen. They like Uncle Justin's boys better. Is it because I'm a girl? Should I be more like them? In that second, something inside me shattered. But it wasn't a break. It was a breakthrough. For years, I told myself I was enduring the mistreatment to protect her. I told myself that if I paid the bills, if I smoothed things over, if I was the good daughter, I could shield Savannah from their indifference. But looking at her face, I realized I had been lying to myself. I wasn't protecting her. I was training her. This is the invisible chain of the survivor. It is a prison without bars that we build for ourselves and then pass down to our children. By staying in contact with people who devalued us, by paying for their affection. I was teaching Savannah that love is transactional. I was teaching her that she has to audition for her place in the family. I was teaching her that being ignored is normal and that if someone treats you like an option, you should try harder to become a priority. I was forging the next link in the chain. I was preparing her to be a pleaser, an enabler, a wallet for someone else's ego. If I went back now, if I paid that mortgage, if I apologized, I would be validating her doubt. I would be telling her, yes, this treatment is acceptable. We just have to work harder for it. I took the iPad from her hands and turned it off. The screen went black. No, baby, I said, my voice fierce and steady. It is not because you are a girl. It is because they are broken and we are not going to try to fix them anymore. I pulled her into my lap. I held her tighter than I ever had. We are enough, I whispered into her hair. Just us. We are enough. The guilt evaporated. The wavering stopped. I wasn't just fighting for my dignity anymore. I was fighting for her future. The chain ended here. I would not let my daughter grow up to be me. I woke up the next morning, not as a daughter, but as a logistics manager in my line of work. When a supply chain is bleeding money and producing no value, you don't cry about it, you cut it, you restructure. I decided to treat my relationship with my parents not as a tragedy, but as a failing business division that needed to be liquidated. I sat at my kitchen table, my laptop open, a notepad to my right. I didn't call my mother. I didn't text my brother. I dialed the automotive leasing company. The SUV my father drove, an obsidian black luxury model with leather seats he insisted were necessary for his back, was legally mine. I was the primary leaseholder. He was just the man who drove it to the golf course while I took the bus to work. I need to initiate a voluntary surrender of the vehicle, I told the agent. My voice was flat. Professional. The agent hesitated. Ma'am, are you sure? We can offer a payment deferment if you're experiencing hardship. I'm not experiencing hardship, I said, staring at the brick wall outside my window. I am experiencing clarity. The vehicle is at this address in Naperville. You can pick it up anytime after 8 a.m. This will result in a penalty fee, the agent warned, and the remaining balance will be sent to collections. I accepted the terms and sent the recovery team, crossing vehicle off my list. Then I shut down every utility account still in my name, electric, gas, even the premium cable my brother insisted he needed. When asked if I wanted to transfer service, I said no. Let them qualify on their own. They never would. Next came the email rewritten 3 times until it was sharp enough to cut. Subject: Financial restructuring notice of termination effective immediately. I ended the $2,500 stipend, canceled the SUV lease, and scheduled all utilities for disconnection. It wasn't negotiable. If they needed help, they could ask Justin. When I clicked send, it felt less like revenge and more like a CEO saving a collapsing company. For 2 days, I audited 3 years of bank statements, proving to myself I wasn't the villain. Then I found it the $1,200 heart medication transfer. It hadn't gone to a pharmacy. It went to Justin on Instagram. He proudly showed off a $199 remote-controlled airplane he bought that same day, thanking Grandpa for it. They had faked a medical emergency to steal from me. The guilt snapped. 2 days later, my parents appeared at my door looking shattered. No SUV, no country club sheen. They begged for help as foreclosure loomed. I asked where Justin was. Of course, he refused to take their debt. When my mother played the heart condition card again, I handed them the printed evidence. Their faces collapsed. You didn't need help, I said. You needed my money. You used my fear to fund Justin's toys. I closed the door slowly, locking it with finality. Their life fell apart within weeks. The house was auctioned off. They moved into a cramped apartment. Justin didn't take them in. Parasites don't feed other parasites. I blocked them all. Not out of spite, but because peace is priceless. 6 months later, at Savannah's 8th birthday. Surrounded by real family, friends, and neighbors, I deleted the last folder labeled Mom and Dad from my banking app. I felt lighter than ever. I hadn't lost a family. I had escaped one that never truly existed. If you've ever paid the price for your family's love, you're not alone. And if you're still paying, maybe it's time to close the account.